Hey everyone, it's Melanie again from Hagera Health. I just wanted to bring you another art video to give you something to do at home, something relaxing, soothing that you can do to help with stress relief. So I know a lot of us, including myself, do tend to have a lot of tissue paper lying around the house, sometimes left over from Christmas or a random birthday. There's always like a couple scraps left. So I wanted to bring an art project today that involves tissue paper. So we're going to go over the materials that we will need. Starting off, obviously you need tissue paper. So if you don't have any laying around the house, then you can get some at pretty much any store. I grabbed a package from Michael's because I frequent there, and they do have a pretty thick stack of variety of colors for tissue paper. So I grabbed some of those. You're also going to need scissors. These are optional, so they're not required, and you'll see why. So we also are going to need a foam brush, and most importantly, we're going to need Mod Podge. This is a water-based sealer, glue, and finish. If you haven't used it, it's great. So you're definitely going to need some Mod Podge for this. And then also you're going to need a colored pencil, just a light color of any kind that's going to be a little subtle. And then you're going to need any kind of black marker, Sharpie, ink pen, as long as it can do black markings. And then lastly, obviously, we need something to put it on. So the paper that we're going to use today, I would recommend using something a little on the thicker side. So not just standard printer paper. You'll need some kind of, it can be cardstock, watercolor paper, mixed media paper, just anything that's a little bit thicker. So the project we'll be working on today is making a mosaic with tissue paper. You can basically pick whatever image you'd like to work off of. You can use a reference photo. Sometimes the easiest thing to start with is a landscape or something that has more color blocking, not too much detail would be a good image to use for this type of project. You don't have to have an image if you don't want to. You can use your imagination if that's what you would rather do. Either one works. So we will go ahead and get started. Okay, so starting off, I have all of the different tissue colors that I'm going to be using for my picture today. I pre-cut some squares from the tissue paper. That's one method you can do to have them prepared, or you can rip them as you go. You're going to take your pencil to draw out the picture beforehand to get a general idea of where to put the tissue paper. This is the picture that I chose to use as a reference, and it is just that. It doesn't have to be exactly like the picture when we end up. So I'm just going to begin drawing out the general shapes. You can't really see the markings over the camera, but that's because you want to make sure that they're light, so that way when you layer the tissue paper on, they won't show through. Once you have your template, we can get started with the Mod Podge. We will be using this to glue down the tissue paper and also seal it on top. I started with the darkest color on the bottom, and I used the cutout shapes first to get a cleaner edge. Basically start by putting down some Mod Podge where you want to begin placing the tissue paper, and then begin placing them. I will go ahead and speed up the process so that you can see it from start to finish. As you are putting down tissue paper, not only are you going to put Mod Podge directly on the paper, but you will also put Mod Podge on top of the tissue paper as you lay it down. This will act as a sealer, and it'll give a finish to the piece. It also helps to keep the tissue paper attached to the paper. As you can see, I begin ripping the tissue paper to get more of a raw edge. This process is up to you. Ripping the tissue paper can allow you more flexibility, and it can have more of an organic feel to it, whereas pre-cutting shapes can be used for a more precise and clean look. The second section of color, I decided that I wanted a darker purple than what I have in tissue paper. So I decided to begin layering the tissue. I put the black tissue paper down as a first layer, and then layered the purple on top. That's also a very fun part about this project, is the experimentation that can happen with layering of the tissue. The transparency or the lack thereof due to the layering can give you more variety and depth for your picture. A lot of this process is trial and error and seeing how you feel with your picture as you go. Another thing to keep in mind while making this is to have fun with the texture. Once the Mod Podge is on the tissue paper, you can wrinkle it or place it however you would like, and it can give you a great textured effect to your piece. You'll notice as you go along that this project can be quite messy and sticky, but that's all part of the tactile experience, which can be soothing to partake in. Once I get to the top portion where the sun is, and there's smaller shapes you can see, it takes a bit more effort to rip pieces or place them in a more strategic way. This is the reason why having a lot of detail in the picture can make it more difficult. Difficult, but not impossible. All just depends on if you enjoy more of that fine detail work, or if you'd rather just do more color blocking. At the end here, as long as your piece is not too wet, you can go through and cut off any extra tissue paper that is over the edges to clean it up. If you don't have scissors, you can just fold them over the edges with Mod Podge so that they stick to the other side. Alright, now that part one is done and you've probably washed the glue off of your hands, we can get started with the second part of this project, which we will need your ink pen or Sharpie, whatever one you chose, for this part. And as you can see, my piece is now dry, completely dry before starting this part two. And we'll get started. This part brings in the finishing touches of the piece. You will use your black marker to begin outlining different things within your picture. I am outlining the different color blocks I have there to separate them further. After basic outlines are done, I begin adding some shading here and there by hatching and cross-hatching. And that's basically putting lines on an angle close together, either parallel or perpendicular, as a way to create shading. And in this piece, I'm using it to give more of a graphic feel. I then just continue to add lines for texture. A good way is using the natural lines that the tissue paper creates. Just have fun with it. Lastly, I went through to redefine some of my outlines thicker to have more variety and depth in the picture. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Here's the final piece of our tissue paper mosaic. And I hope you enjoyed being able to use up some of that tissue paper and get a little bit messy in the process. All right, I will see you guys later.